Skip Weber and Weber Chevrolet.
It's going to be a big year. We're resetting things. We got new incentives out there. Pricing is probably about the same as what it's been. But as we start things on the new year, we are a little bit down on our inventory because of the good December. And when they stop producing the last week of the month and the first week of this month, it's a little bit off kilter from the normal month after month production of cars. So we're a little bit down on our inventory, but our prices haven't changed at all because of it. You can always buy stuff and put your name on it coming in, but we have a lot of pre-owned vehicles. Trade-ins do that for us. Just check our website. I think you'll really, really like what you see because our prices are the best. And if you look at the reviews, we are by far the best reviewed Chevy dealer in a large radius. And that's based on reputation.com and dealerrater.com. So I just know we're the best place to buy.
Granite City, Columbia, Illinois, 11270 and online at WeberChevrolet.com. The Weber Automotive Group.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're privileged to have with us a man known all over the world as the Prince of Peace, Jesus Christ.
That's right.
How are you, Jesus?
Fine, thanks, and let me say it's great to be back.
Can you tell us after all this time why you came back?
Mostly nostalgia.
Well, could you tell us, Jesus, a little bit about the first time you were here?
Well, it's not much to tell. I think everybody knows the story by now. I was born on Christmas.
Yes.
And actually, that always bothered me because that way I only got one present. You know, if I was born a couple of months earlier, I would have had two presents. But look, I'm not complaining. It's only material.
Were you really born in a stable?
Nah, I was born in a hospital, Bethlehem Jewish Hospital, but the hospital was located in a stable. That's how the story got started.
And is it true that there was no room at the inn?
Oh, no, they had room. It's just that we didn't have reservations. My father, Joseph, God bless him, he was a simple man. He didn't travel much. He forgot to make reservations.
There's a story that there were 3 wise men.
Well, there were 3 kings who showed up. I don't know how wise they were. They didn't look wise. They said they followed a star. That don't sound wise to me.
Didn't they bring gifts?
Yes, gold, frankincense, and I believe myrrh, which I never did find out what that was. You don't happen to know what myrrh is for, do you?
Well, I believe it's a reddish-brown bitter gum resin.
Oh, great. Great, just what I need, a gum resin. What am I going to do with a gum resin? I'd rather have the money. That way I can go out, I could buy something I need. You know, something I wouldn't normally buy for myself.
What would that be?
Well, I don't know, a bathing suit. I never had a bathing suit. Maybe a Devo hat. A bicycle. I really could have used a bicycle. You realize all the walking I did? I must have crossed Canaan 6-8 times, up and down, north and south, walking and talking, doing miracles, telling stories.
Tell us about the miracles. How many miracles did you perform?
A total of 107 miracles, not counting the loaves and the fishes.
Why don't you count the loaves and the fishes?
Well, technically, that one wasn't a miracle.
It wasn't?
No, it turns out a lot of people were putting them back. Didn't like them. Actually, not all those miracles were pure miracles anyway.
What do you mean? What were they if they weren't miracles?
Well, some of them were parlor tricks, optical illusions, mass hypnosis. We had hallucinations, even acupressure. That was how I cured most of the blind guys, acupressure.
So, not all of the New Testament is true.
No, some of that gospel stuff never happened at all. It was just made up. Luke and Mark used a lot of drugs. See, Luke was a physician and he had access to drugs. Matthew and John were okay, but Luke and Mark would write anything.
What about raising Lazarus from the dead?
First of all, he wasn't dead. He was hungover. I've told people
But
that.
in the Bible, you said he was dead.
I said he looked dead. I said, hey, he looks dead. You see, Lazarus was a very heavy sleeper. Plus, the day before, we had been to a wedding feast, and he had put away a lot of wine.
Ah, was that the wedding feast of Cana, where you changed the water into wine?
I don't know. We went to an awful lot of wedding feasts in those days.
But did you really ever turn water into wine?
Not that I know of. One time I did turn apple juice into milk, but I really don't recall the water and wine thing.
All right. Speaking of water, let me ask you about another miracle. What about walking on the water? I mean, did that really happen?
Oh, yeah, that was one that really happened. You see, the problem was I could do it. The other guys couldn't do it. They were jealous. Peter got mad at me, so he got these special shoes made. Special big shoes. If you start out walking real fast, you can float in the water for a while. Then, of course, after a few yards, looms, he goes right down into the water. He sinks like a rock. That's why I call him Peter. Thou art Peter, and upon this rock I shall build my church.
Well, that brings up the apostles. Yeah. What can you tell us about the apostles?
Well, they were a good bunch of guys, you know. They smelled a little like bait, but, they was a good bunch of guys. 13 of them we had.
13? The Bible says there were only 12.
Well, that was according to St. Luke. And I told you about Luke. Actually, we had 13 apostles. We had Peter, James, John, Andrew, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, that's a different James, Thaddeus, let's see, how many is that now?
That's 10.
Okay, Simon, Judas, and Red.
Red?
Yeah, we call him Red the Apostle.
Red the Apostle? He doesn't appear in the Bible.
No, he kept pretty much to himself. He never came to any of the miracles. He was a little strange. He thought the Red Sea was named after him.
What about Judas?
Hey, don't get me started on Judas.
Okay, well, what about the other apostles? Say, for instance, Thomas. Was he really a doubter?
This guy, Thomas, you couldn't tell him nothing, you know? He's always asking me for my ID. Soon as I see him, got any ID? To this day, he doesn't believe I'm God.
Are you God?
Well, partly, you know that. I'm a member of the Trinity.
Yes, in fact, you've written a book about the Trinity, haven't you?
That's right. It's called Three's a Crowd.
Three's a crowd. As I understand it, it's nothing more than a thinly veiled attack on the Holy Ghost.
Listen, it's not an attack. You want to know what it is? I don't get along with the Holy Ghost, all right? So I leave him alone. That's it. What he does is his business.
Well, why? What's the reason?
Well, first of all, you never know who he's going to be. Every day he shows up, he's something different. One day he comes in to meet and he's a dove. Another day he's a tongue of fire. Always fooling around. Listen, I don't bother with the guy. I don't want to know about him. I don't see him. I don't talk to him.
Well, let me change the subject.
All right.
Is there really a place called hell?
Oh, yeah, there's a hell, sure. There's also a heck. It's not as severe, but we got heck and hell.
What about purgatory?
No, don't know nothing about no purgatory. We got heaven, hell, heck, and limbo.
What is limbo like?
I don't know. No one's allowed in there. If anyone was in there, it wouldn't be limbo. Then it would be a place.
Getting back to your previous visit, Jesus, what can you tell us about the Last Supper?
Well, first of all, if I had known I was going to be crucified, I would have had a bigger meal. You never want to be crucified on an empty stomach.
The crucifixion must have been terrible.
It was awful, I gotta tell you. Unless you've gone through it yourself, you could never know how painful it was. And tiring. It was very, very tiring and embarrassing. I think more than anything, it was embarrassing. You know, right in front of everybody to be crucified. But I don't know, I guess it redeemed a lot of people.
Were you scared?
Yeah. Near the end, I thought it was gonna rain. I was afraid I might get hit by lightning. But all in all, I would say when I was here, I had a good time.
What do you think about Christianity?
Well, I'm a little embarrassed by it. If I had to do it over again, I think I'd start one of them Eastern religions like Buddha did. Now, Buddha was smart. That's why he's laughing.
You wouldn't want to be a Christian?
No, I would never want to be a member of any group whose symbol is a man nailed onto two pieces of wood, especially if it's me. Buddha's laughing, I'm on the cross.
I have a few more questions. Do you mind?
Hey, be my guest. How often do I get here?
Are there really angels?
Well, not as many as we used to have. Years ago, we had millions of them. Today, you can't get the young people to join, you know. It got too dangerous with radar and heat-seeking missiles.
What about guardian angels?
Well, we still have guardian angels, but now it's one angel for every 6 people. Years ago, everybody had his own angel.
Do you really answer prayers?
No. First of all, most of them don't even get through. I mean, you got sunspots, you got radio interference. Years ago, we answered them all. But years ago, there were less people. And people prayed for something simple then. To light a fire, to catch a yak, something like that. But today, you got people praying for hockey teams, people praying for longer fingernails. We just can't keep up with it.
Well, I think we're just about out of time. I certainly want to thank you for visiting with us.
Hey, no sweat.
Do you have any last thoughts or words of advice?
What do you mean, like how to remove perspiration stains from a garment, something like that?
No, I mean spiritual advice.
Well, I don't know how spiritual it is, but I'd say one thing is don't give your money to the church. They should be giving their money to you.
Happy Easter to you and everybody you know. It's JC. This is the Sunday Showgram. We're here for the next 2 hours telling old stories. And I got a million of them. And we're going to get into a lot of stuff here today in our JC Celebrity A-List Interview of the Week. The guy who founded or co-founded POCO and also co-founded the Buffalo Springfield, Richie Ferre. He's coming up in hour number 2. We're also going to talk about a lot of other stuff, including Baltimore catechism. And also we're going to talk to the curator of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland. We're doing that because this is that time of year where people are starting to solidify their summer vacations. And especially for those of you who have kids or nieces, nephews, grandkids, whatever the case may be, who have discovered music and the great stories, the background stories involving the music industry, and just instruments and all sorts of influences and just like I said, the history of rock and roll. And Cleveland, they really do a nice job. There's been a lot of problems in Cleveland. They had some guys apparently selling stuff that didn't belong to them. It's supposed to be in the museum, and instead they're like, well, I'll be taking this home and then I'm going to put it on eBay. So they've had a couple of problems with stuff like that. You can't please everybody. The place is absolutely enormous, and in addition to the films and the little dissertations that people give you, they have people roaming around with the people. That's one nice thing about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, is the people who are like guards and tour guides, security people, everybody who's in the place engages with the people who are there. So you might find yourself in conversation with some security guard or something because you're standing there looking at a guitar for a real, real long time. And I've had, people walk up to me and go, you like that guitar? I'm like, well, I'm just fascinated by it. He goes, well, this and this and this. And he starts giving me a whole big story, because apparently what happens is people go in there and they share their stories with the people who work there too. And all of that stuff is sort of cataloged by the people who work there. They double check it, obviously, to make sure that somebody isn't making something up or if they're wrong about something, but they sort of work their way into all of this stuff. So you have all that, but I always tell people, give it at least a day, and if you can afford to spend 2 days there, do that, because you're going to spend at least an hour or two in the gift shop alone. It is, I'm really trying to think about this and I've had this discussion with people before, trying to think about some sort of national attraction that has a better gift shop than the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Now, I will say 30 Rock, the whole NBC store, that's pretty good too, but it is a closet compared to what they have in Cleveland. This thing is enormous. It's the size of a freaking Walmart, and they've got everything. It doesn't even matter what you would want. If you want a keychain, you can get that. If you want a Sammy Hagar guitar, you can probably get that too. So, and all points in between. Blankets, hats, shirts, the shot glass, just everything you could possibly imagine. And a lot of, I call it rock and roll art, just artist renderings of famous events in rock and roll history, just all that sort of stuff. Jackets and sweaters and gaiters and all sorts of stuff. So I always tell people, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the exhibits and the tour and everything like that, and they have films, little theaters with films, as you can see, that trace the history of rock and roll. So they have all of that stuff. But at the end, you're like, well, that's it. Well, let's stop at the gift shop. And you're like, sir, we're closing. But I'm not done yet. So give yourself time if you're planning to go there. And like I said, we'll be talking to the curator. I was up there a couple of years ago and said, let's just sit down and really have a long conversation about what you've got here. And I think I have some good questions for him. I think he had some good answers too. So all that is coming up a little bit later on in the show. I wish I was in a little better mood. Just not long ago, I was on the phone with my insurance company. I won't say the name of the insurance company because I don't know. I don't want people mad at me, okay? I got enough people mad at me already. I don't want any more. But I got a particular insurance company when I was 15 years old, when I got my learner's permit, all right? And I've had that insurance company not only for the car, but also for homeowners insurance. And I've had that continually, uninterrupted, since I was 15 years old. And I'm not 15 anymore. This is the same speech I had to give to AT&T. My beautiful Lily, it broke my heart to have to leave her. Milana Weintraub. She's actually got a couple of scenes in that new movie with Ryan Gosling that I despise. But, I kept telling people, she's in the movie, and if that wasn't enough to save it for me, then you can tell it's bad. And people have taken issue with me about it. Well, I saw it, and I thought it was good. And then people are like, well, did you read the book? Because it follows the book. I go, look, we've had this discussion before. A book is a book, and a movie is a movie. It's two completely different things. And just because you read the book or just because there was a book doesn't have anything to do at all with movie making. Even the words they say on screen is not the book. That's a screenplay. You know, when they're going to make a movie out of a book, they got to bring somebody in to write the screenplay, because you can't just go up, you can't just start the movie and have, people up there like they're reading a book. So somebody writes a screenplay. So the screenplay obviously is going to be different than the way the book reads, and I'm tired of talking about this. But a book is a book and a movie is a movie, and I don't care, because 99.9% of the people who go in to see that Ryan Gosling movie have not read the book. So that is a non-factor in the review of the movie. So I don't care. So don't pull that crap on me. But anyhow, going back to the loyalty factor here. Yeah, so, it broke my heart to have to leave Lily. I know it's getting a little spooky. I'm treating her like she's not separate from the human being. But I've had that problem my entire life. But anyhow, you're walking around your house and your cell phone doesn't work, and you go to the store and they tell you privately, yeah, we have a lot of people come in, because we moved into this house 6.5 years ago and the phone doesn't work. And so I kept going to them, and finally I was like, yeah, we actually have had a lot of problems in this area. I'm like, why don't you put up some new towers or something? There's some sort of ordinance or something like that. Well, all I know is this: I can't stay with a phone company where the phone doesn't work when I'm sitting at my house. Okay, so sorry, we have to leave. Even though I think it was 1988 when I got my first cell phone. And so for over 30 years, I've got AT&T, got to leave. And it's starting to look that way with this insurance company too, because I think I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, my daughter, who is 16 and taking driver's ed and doing very, very well, got a little confused with the pedals about a month ago and hit the gas when she should have hit the brake and went through the garage door. And down here, we have what are called hurricane doors, because somebody figured out that the overwhelming majority of cases where a hurricane comes in and destroys a house, the bad stuff from the storm comes in through the garage. That's where the problem starts. So somebody said, well, what if we make these garage doors special for Florida and have all these reinforcements and everything? If you have a power failure at your house and you can't get in or out of your garage, what do? You pull that little rope, that little cord, and you can lift the garage door up by yourself. You can't do that with these. These things, you could have Anatoly from those from those videos I love, where he just looks like he's dressed up like a janitor, but he can lift weights 10 times better than these muscular guys that have muscles coming out of their eyebrows. It's the funniest thing I've ever seen. So yeah, so you have these hurricane doors. So when I actually got to give credit to my 16-year-old daughter for being able to go through it and ruin the door. So that was about a month ago. So we filed the claim, got the people come out, look around. They're like, it's totaled. Got to completely replace the door. Okay, fine. And I've been waiting ever since. So I called the insurance company on Monday, and I said, I haven't heard anything from anybody. Monday, nothing. Tuesday, nothing. Wednesday, nothing. Now it's been 4 more days, and I haven't even gotten a return call. What the hell is going on? And I told the guy, I said, I've all stayed since I was 15 years old. Do you know how close I am to canceling my policy with you guys? You know how close you are? So I'm still mad from being on the phone with those guys. And this is my problem, not yours. I apologize for having burdened you with it. But you got to talk to somebody, and everybody else is asleep, so you're it. All right, I got a little long-winded there in the opening segment, but we are supposed to start the show with something called The Weekend Pickup. It's a collection of semi-psychotic, stupid, pointless stories you'd be better off without. Let's go to press. I want to talk about the space program a little bit later on in the show. We'll get to that, but I want to start with this story because when I read it, I thought to myself, it's an April Fool's Day joke, but apparently it's not. This comes out of the New York Times. A startup company called Reflect Orbital is asking for approval to launch space mirrors that could bounce sunlight back to Earth after dark. They say all you'd need to do would be to open up an app, drop a pin in, and sunlight will arrive at your location in 30 seconds. But there's plenty of critics, as you might suspect. Scientists are warning that the extra light could confuse animals and disrupt our sleep. And some researchers say the math doesn't even add up. They're saying it could take thousands of satellites just to match a fraction of daylight. This company's first test is going to launch later this month. Again, it's called Reflect Orbital. Whenever I have to go in for surgery, and I've had more surgeries in the last 15, 20 years than I care to admit. What have I had? 2 neck operations, 3 lower back operations, appendix out, 2 sets of stents put in, ankle surgery. I'm going to stop there. Told the surgeon last time, why don't you just put in a zipper? Because every 6 months you're going in anyhow. Anyhow, the longest the longest surgery ever recorded was performed in 2001. There were 20 doctors involved. It took a whopping 103 hours to complete the surgery. That's more than 4 days. They were separating 11-month-old twins who were conjoined at the head. The surgery was a success. Now, every time I read a story that has anything to do with that subject, I can't help but think about my old pal, Brian McKenna. And the first anniversary of his fatal accident was just about 2 weeks ago, so we're all thinking about him anyhow. And we're going to do another giant street party again on May 30th. So mark that down on your calendar. May 30th, I'll be in town to MC that as I did last year. We did very, very well. Big crowds, a lot of money raised for Brian's charities, and we'll give you more specific details about what to expect this year as we get a little closer to that date of May 30th, but mark that down, okay? Anyhow, back in the KLOU days, Clue 103.3, we were doing the morning show there, and Brian was part of the show, and as was often the case, we figured out a way to turn the stomach of our good friend and producer, Karen Kelly.
I'm going to try to make it through this sportscast after watching that segment on TV.
Well, 90 hours of surgery to separate those two.
Siamese twins. I guess you could say after the operation they had splitting headaches. The look Karen gave me.
I know. Sometimes there's just no hope. I always have women, I love it, come up to me at these rallies saying, I don't know how you do it.
They're actually
Get on the scissor lift?
I know you've seen the older ladies who are attached at the head. JC, we were just talking about it. And it's really sad because one's in a wheelchair and the other one...
So sad that way you're laughing?
No, I'm laughing because the one time was talking about getting married. Like, what did you say?
She's Siamese twins joined at the head.
Yes.
Okay. And one of them's in a wheelchair and one isn't?
Yes.
One must have an aching back at the end of the day.
My God. Every day.
And the one's talking about getting married.
He's just so optimistic.
I'm like, I hope the other one likes her brother-in-law.
Oh.
I'm just picturing this guy proposing to her. And the other one's going, say yes, say yes.
We have reached an all-time
Get married.
low.
About 6 months into the marriage. Do we have to take her everywhere? Everywhere we go.
Look, I could just see the marriage counselor. You two need some privacy. You need some time alone. Oh, my God.
Siamese twin jokes. We've reached an all-time low.
Hey, you want to see a movie tonight? No, you're going anyway. You don't have a choice. Oh, my God. I can't even.
Honey, you're hogging the covers again. No, it's me. You blame me for everything. It's her.
Say yes. Oh, my
We
God.
might not get another chance like this. I just don't know if he's my type.
Oh, my God.
I could say yes, and then the ideal guy could just walk by tomorrow. Then what?
You want to go to a baseball game? Yeah, tomorrow's a doubleheader.
Brian's Stop.
Should get in free.
You see the husband going through the paper every weekend looking for 2-for-1 sales.
What if only one got a haircut that day?
Hello, you're on the air.
Karen, how
Yes.
do you put up with this
Thank
every
you.
day?
Thank you.
Hello.
Can you imagine getting a blow up?
Is that,
He's talking about their hair. I was talking about the haircuts.
yeah, right. Blow dry, you meant
Yes.
to say. Hello, you're on the air.
You know why Europe is the favorite vacation spot for Siamese twins?
Here it comes, folks.
Because the other one gets to drive.
When they were little, the parents didn't have to say, look both ways before crossing the street.
Brian. This being Holy Week and all. Good Friday. Uh-huh.
Oh, man. All right.
We're not making fun of their misfortune.
No, we've just told every joke we can think of.
Not making fun of their misfortune. It's just, I'm sorry, as an outsider on something like this, it just does seem to be almost inconceivable that a Siamese twin would... The other one would say, hey, I saw him first.
I saw him first.
I don't condone this kind of behavior, even though I was part of the whole thing. Where was I? Surgery was a success. Right. What's something you thought would be bigger as a kid than it actually is as an adult? I was terrified of quicksand when I would watch Tarzan and Zimbamba and stuff like that, because it was always quicksand. I remember we were running around the neighborhood once and we found some bamboo. And it was like, see, this is what you would use if you ever go down in quicksand. You use the bamboo because as you're sinking down, you put that in your mouth and then you stick it up almost like a snorkel and you can still breathe. I've yet to face that challenge in life. We were worried about the Bermuda Triangle. Stop, drop, and roll. That was a big one. 90% of what they tried to teach us in math. I'm not sure I've ever had to use a parallelogram for anything. According to an uplifting news story, most Americans are just 3 months away from financial collapse. Sharon Stone, if one of her movies is on, she fast forwards through the sex scenes because she doesn't want to see blatant sexuality. She just wants to show it. She doesn't want to watch it. There's an actor by the name of Taylor Sheridan. Taylor Sheridan is in Yellowstone and Landman. And Taylor Sheridan tries to piss off TV critics with his shows. Here's the quote: "The madder you are, the madder your review will be. The more people will read it, the more curious they'll be," end quote. Taylor, I've interviewed over 2,000 celebrities. It doesn't work that way. All that's going to happen is you're going to become very, very unpopular, and people aren't going to want to be around you. I think it's safe to say we've heard plenty from Kelly Ripa and Mark Consuelos about their sex life and the fact that they are doing it whenever they get a chance. And now Kelly Ripa has admitted that she has had some micro needling done on her butt cheeks. When I was in my dating years, I had a tendency to adapt to whatever it is that I would encounter. You'd meet somebody, you go, well, this girl looks exactly the opposite of what the last girl I dated like, but I would just find something interesting about that. Or you'd come off dating somebody with really, really big boobs, and then the next girl you'd take out had little mosquito bites, and it took some getting used to, but eventually you would embrace that. I just found that there was something to be appreciated by everything, every different kind of woman there was, and everything she had to offer. I just think that's a mature way of looking at it, and I know some of you are going, yeah, you're talking about body parts. Real mature, JC. No, I'm just talking about the physicality of things. You know what I meant. But Kelly Ripa is waifish. I interviewed her at Walt Disney World in Orlando a couple of years back, and she was just looking at a bag of sticks. I don't know what this new thing is of going up to celebrities and throwing some sort of liquid on them. Now, this actually goes back, it had to be 15, 20 years ago when Tom Cruise was walking like a red carpet at something, and somebody threw some sort of stuff in his face. It turned out to be water. And Tom Cruise stood there and he said, "Now, why did you do that? I want to know, why would you do something like that?" To his credit, I thought it was a really interesting way to handle it, I guess you would say. And then we had that congressman. I can't remember her name. She's the one with the turban. And she was doing the same thing. She's standing at the podium. Some guy in the first row gets up and throws some sort of liquid at her. And she went after him, by the way, which I thought was pretty damn funny. And but it turned out to be nothing. Same thing happened to Lindsey Buckingham the other night. Somebody doused him with an unknown substance. Turns out it was a female stalker who has been chasing him down for a long time. You got to put people like that away. And the cops will tell you, and the prosecutors will tell you, until or unless this person actually does something to break the law, not a lot we can do. Although it sounds like assault to me. I don't know. Tiger Woods leaving the country for rehab so he'll have more privacy. And let me tell you a little something about oxycodone. If you've never taken it, I'm an expert at this because, I've had all these surgeries, all these back troubles and everything like that. And they have on occasion, many occasions, in fact, giving me oxycodone. So I am very experienced in the use of this stuff. And all I can tell you is I hate it. I hate the way it makes me feel. Now, does it take the pain away? Absolutely. But it's not exactly like steroids. You take steroids and, you'll turn into your own evil twin. But oxycodone, like I said, it just all of a sudden feels like you've got kerosene going through your veins or something, like your blood has been replaced by some sort of foreign substance. Like I said, it works. Sure as hell works. Takes the pain away, but you feel weird. Now, sometimes I would chop it up and take like a third or a half of a pill before I was going to pitch in a baseball game, but that was it. You take a full one, and I'm not sure that it's probably safe to drive. And some people take two, and then it's definitely not safe to drive when you got those things in you. And I think by now everybody's heard the story about all of the misuse and abuse of oxycodone and that family in Indiana, which, did everything they could to get everybody hooked on the darn stuff, and they became billionaires until people figured out, hey, wait a minute. But this is not something I would say I would feel comfortable taking recreationally. For one thing, it is highly, highly addictive. And apparently, that sure seems like what Tiger Woods is doing. And I'll tell you something else. If you took it on an empty stomach, it probably hits you, 20 or 30% harder. And like I said, it really brings you down. It brings you way down, especially if you take two. But it's not a happy feeling. It's not a good feeling. So Tiger apparently is going to go overseas somewhere, get into rehab, or at least that's what he says, because he didn't have any alcohol in his system. That thing came up zeros, but they're like, he must have been on something. His pupils were dilated. He was sweating profusely. He had them in his pocket. This has happened one too many times. More and more. I hate to say it like this, but I'm getting the idea that Tiger Woods is not going to die by natural causes. Let's just put it that way. Hershey's just announced that they're going back to the classic recipe for all Reese's products starting next year. This comes after people complained that they'd cut the quality to save money. We have astronauts in outer space right now, and if, just for the sake of discussion, because they're going to try this at some point, having a baby in space. Now, it might require a little bit more, shall we say, direction, because the navigational abilities of sperm are negatively impacted by a lack of gravity, end quote. Well, that's not talking about having a baby. That's about doing the horizontal bop right there, which in outer space, it might not even be horizontal. But you'd have to assume that, after an ejaculation, the sperm would be going, I don't even know which end is up. This is a good way to have your car windows bashed in. A high school baseball team in Georgia won 46-0. And this was just a few months after the same school beat the same opponent in football 63-0. All right, birthdays this week. Michael Fassbender, the guy who's supposed to have huge junk 49. Pedro Pascal, who might be the most popular guy in Hollywood right now, he's 51. The great and talented Emmylou Harris is 79. Marvin Gaye would have had a birthday. He was shot by his own father in 1984. Leon Russell, who played with everybody from Jerry Lee Lewis to the Rolling Stones and was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2011, would have had a birthday. He was born in 1942. He was also the guy playing piano on Monster Mash. Little known chunk. I just watched this movie on television for the first time in years when it was on about a week or two ago, The Sting. And it was 52 years ago this week, 1974. The Sting beat out The Exorcist, Serpico, and American Graffiti for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. Best Supporting Actress that year was Tatum O'Neal, who was 10 at the time. The movie was Paper Moon. Groucho Marx won an honorary Oscar for all of his Marx Brothers comedies. And it was 21 years ago today, 2005, Pope John Paul II died at the age of 84. He was succeeded by German Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, who became Pope Benedict XVI. He retired 8 years later, and now we got the Chicago Pope, Pope Francis. Hey, what are you guys doing over there by the tabernacle, eh? Oh, and I realize a lot of you don't like Stephen Colbert. If you're listening to this radio station, you probably don't like him. Don't worry, there's only 2 months left of him. But regardless, this is Pete Hegseth and then Colbert following it up. This is funny.
Endurance for the trial ahead, unbreakable unity, and overwhelming violence of action against those who deserve no mercy. We ask these things with bold confidence in the mighty and powerful name of Jesus Christ.
That is not the Jesus I was raised with. And it's not the Jesus the Pope was raised with either, because on Palm Sunday, Pope Leo responded, "Brothers and sisters, this is our God. Jesus, King of Peace, who rejects war, whom no one can use to justify war. He does not listen to the prayers of those who wage war or reject them, saying, even though you make many prayers, I will not listen. Your hands are full of blood."
And that's it. That's the weekend pickup. That's how we start the show every Sunday morning here on the Sunday Showgram on 101.9, 94.1 and the News Talk STL app. So something that's been on my bucket list since I was a little kid was being able to watch a space launch from Cape Canaveral. Now, I'm older than dirt, so I remember this stuff. When I was a little boy, and we were talking maybe 4 or 5 years old, I can remember my dad getting me up in the middle of the night to come out and sit on the front porch, and it was cold, by the way. We'd sit on the front porch all bundled up, and we would see Sputnik going right over the Chicago area. You could see it going right across the sky. It looked like a moving star. I think all little boys, to some extent, really, really got into the space program. And I can remember also the nuns wheeling in the TV to the classroom. And you're like, yes, we're going to get to watch this whole thing with Alan Shepard going up, and then later Gus Grissom, and then John Glenn. That was the big one, though. They gave us off school that day so we could go home and watch it. Because if you're old enough to remember this, it was like, okay, Alan Shepard, you're going straight up and coming straight down. Gus Grissom, you're going straight up, you're coming straight down, in the case of Gus Grissom, all the way down. And then along came John Glenn. And they said, guess what, John? You're not going straight up and straight down. We're setting you up, and you're going to go round 7 times. And then we're going to bring you down. The size of the balls John Glenn must have had to have back then to agree to that. And, of course, he's up there going around, and after the third orbit, his heat shield almost comes off, and they're like, John, cut that 7 down to 3. We're bringing you down right away. And he was lucky, very, very lucky, that he didn't burn up on re-entry. And I met Alan Shepard. They brought him into the St. Louis Science Center once. We had this thing when we were at the River, that radio station, The River, that was around for a while. We had this thing called the Breakfast Club Cabinet, where we basically inducted one person, one of our listeners, from every imaginable walk of life. So we had a doctor, and we had a nurse, and we had an archaeologist, and we had an optometrist, and we had the guy in charge of parking meters downtown, and we had somebody who knew all about cooking, and somebody who knew, it didn't matter. If you were sort of an expert in your field, it was like, okay, you're part of the Breakfast Club cabinet. And we had the induction ceremony at the Science Center. Hello, Bev Pfeiffer Harms, wherever you are. And they brought in Alan Shepard. It was just a coincidence. They didn't bring him in for this. He just happened to be scheduled that day. And everybody that got inducted, and there was it must have been 150 people. Everybody got to meet Alan Shepard, get their picture taken, shake his hand, and all of that cool stuff. But the real kick. Oh, let me stop first. Years back, we had Buzz Aldrin in the studio. And you want to talk about a dick. Now, in his defense, he was the original choice to be the first man to walk on the moon, not Neil Armstrong. And then something got jumbled up, and they turned it around, and they're like, okay, Buzz, you're going to go up there. You're going to be the second man to walk on the moon, but we're going to give this to Neil Armstrong. And if I was walking around with that my entire life, knowing that I was the second man to walk on the moon, that ain't no good. I would be pissed, too. But I'm not sure I'd go around being just an insufferable prick like he was. But then, like I said, the big thrill was when we had Jim Lovell in the studio. James Lovell, played by Tom Hanks in Apollo 13, the guy who was largely responsible, not to mention with the guys in Houston who were figuring out a way to get them back when they didn't have any power left. But that was pretty cool today. He was in the studio.
We've had the setup there from John Scott from Dateline NBC talking about the mission that went awry. What was scarier for you, that or trying to land in the windstorm last night at Lambert Field?
I'll tell you, last night was really something to behold. Lightning, thunder, the airplane bumping all around. I said, "Oh my gosh, Houston, we got a problem here."
And there's nobody coming back on.
All right, we've got about 600 guys working on this, and we'll get back to you.
Got up there, and it's 3 guys in the cockpit, and that's
right.
pretty much it. We grew up with this story, obviously. I'm 41, so we've known this story. Why go back now and write this book?
Well, it's like a fine wine. It needed some aging. After the initial euphoria of getting us recovered, NASA sort of wanted to bury this flight. I mean, it was, a failure after all. They wanted to remember Apollo 8 and Apollo 11. As a matter of fact, I think the spacecraft has been exiled to Paris in a small museum all these years. But now I think they realize it was a real triumph from teamwork and motivation and initiative to get an almost certain catastrophe back home safely. And
yeah, well, look, anybody who ever works with any kind of electronic equipment, and of course we do here, it is inevitable that something is going to fail. So why NASA? And we've learned in later years about all the politicking that kind of drives the NASA space program, and leading right up to the Challenger accident and everything like that, when it turns out that maybe there was more politicking going on than anybody knew anything about. But you're absolutely right. I think this is a tremendous story. This isn't a story of failure. It's a story of triumph.
And it's a real true adventure story, too, JC. I mean, it's not a Star Trek. I mean, it's not fantasy. It's real.
It seems to me that there is an increasing amount of space junk up there, and that doesn't even count asteroids and comets and anything else that's floating around up there. What are the mathematical probabilities that at some point some manned space mission is going to encounter a piece of space junk the wrong way?
Oh, very, very remote. I mean, I don't know. It's in the millions to one, I guess, because, our space junk is all going about in the same direction, going in an easterly direction. So, even the collision probably wouldn't be that great. It's some of the, a stray meteor coming through that we're really worried about.
So you hear the explosion, the thing starts rocking back and forth, it stabilizes, and when was the next indication that you had a problem?
Well, the next indication that I had a problem is when I saw all our fuel cells, which produce electricity, they're all failing. Then I looked out the window and I saw a gaseous substance escaping from at a high rate of speed, and I knew that it was oxygen because I saw the oxygen gauges go down. And so it didn't take much intelligence on my part that I thought we were in deep, deep trouble.
See, now I got to remember that conversation that aired right there that you just heard the clip from took place before the movie Apollo 13 came out. So everybody's seen Apollo 13 about 600 times now. So we have all this stuff committed to memory. Back then, when we had James Lovell in the studio, we didn't know any of this stuff, or we knew very little, let's put it that way. But the reason I'm telling you this story is because I finally got it off my bucket list. Now, I had gone all the way over to Cape Canaveral about 3 or 4 years ago to see a launch, and of course the thing gets scrubbed. So now you're standing there, and there's thousands and thousands, and I'm talking about maybe between 50 and 100,000 people who have gathered around. You got all these cars, And, there's no highways around there. Everything is just 4-lane and 2-lane highways, a couple of expressways. That's it. And now all those people are like, oh, crap. They all hop in their car, and they're all trying to get out at the same time. I think I probably sat there for about an hour and a half before I was able to move. So I'm very leery about making that trip over there again. And it's about a 3-hour drive from where I live in West Central Florida near Tampa. So this time they told us, they said, no, where you are right there near Tampa, you should be able to see the thing take off. I'm like, really? So 6:24 last night, go out, find an open field away from the lights, although it was still light out, but I still wanted to get away from any sort of obstruction. And I come up to a field, and there's a couple of people standing there in the middle of a field, and they got binoculars, and it's like, now keep in mind, this is like a 3-hour drive away. And I couldn't help but think to myself, I'm not going to be able to see this thing from this far away. Well, sure enough, the thing goes up, and it was right there. It looked like a silver airplane going up and leaving a tremendous amount of engine trail, contrails, or whatever they call those things technically. So it's smoke. And we could even feel a little bit of the rumble and could even hear a little bit of the rumble from 3 hours away. That's how big that sucker is and how powerful that thing is. So I'm counting it. I'm putting it on the list of stuff I've gotten off my bucket list. Maybe one of these times I'll take the drive over again and see it close up. But for right now, at least I have witnessed a space launch from Cape Canaveral. And it's very exciting. I would highly recommend it.
Hi, I need to speak to JC. I've been trying to talk to him since before the election.
Yeah, he's a big pain in the butt. Can I just give him a message?
Just tell him I think he's an arrogant jackass. I'll tell you the reason why.
All right. Just so you know, by the way, he drives me crazy, too. I hate him.
Well, he made the comment that he said, who do these religious people think they are, when they were going to vote against the stem cell? Who do they think they are? And I thought, what an arrogant jackass.
Right. I agree. He's always doing stuff like that.
And who are you? Are you JC?
Yeah.
I figured you might be.
Are you an electrician?
You
hang up.
Big dummy.
What do you think it is, robot?
I compute it to be an ionic directional probe, a radio beam searching for receiving outlets.
You mean someone's trying to reach us?
Someone is trying to reach any radio receiver.
Well, maybe they're in trouble. We'd better help them.
No, William, don't. We have no way of knowing who it is out there. They might be terrible people.
Dr. Smith, whoever they are, they're in trouble or something. We can't just stand here and do nothing.
Why not?
This is the Jupiter 2. Identify yourself, please.
It's JC's Sunday Showgram on NewsTalkSTL.
Well, when I was digging through the archives trying to figure out who I could play, what interview do I have somewhere stuffed away in the archives that has something to do with Easter? And I couldn't find anything. So then I was like, okay, anything have to do with religion or God or whatever? And it occurred to me, bong, that's it. I remember Richie Furay, the founding member of POCO and Buffalo Springfield, is an ordained minister. And a couple of years ago, he put out a new album of covers of his favorite country music songs, putting a little bit of country rock spin onto some traditionally country songs. Back in the mid-1970s, Buffalo Springfield, and the guy we're going to talk to right now not only co-founded that band, but also POCO, Not Bad Work. And then on his own, the Souther Hillman Furay Band with Chris Hillman and J.D. Souther. This guy was in the thick of it all. And recently he put out a new album of covers. Great songs, but his take on them, including one from John Denver. How you doing, Richie?
Hey, good, JC. How you doing, man?
Very, very good. And thank you for immediately addressing the issue of your name. My God, even musicians you've played with. I've heard 4 or 5 different pronunciations of Richie Now I just did it.
See, there you go.
The hell's wrong with me?
Hooray will work. How's that?
Hooray will work. By the way, there is something indigenous to St. Louis, and one of the songs on your new album, one of your covers, Take Me Home Country Roads. Are you aware of the connection between that song and the St. Louis Blues hockey team?
No, I'm not.
A couple of years ago, in 2019, the St. Louis Blues won their first ever Stanley Cup. They had been around since 1967, but never had won a Stanley Cup. 2019, they won, and sort of spontaneously, people started singing "Take Me Home, Country Roads."
Oh, gosh.
And all of a sudden, there's 20,000 people in the arena all singing "Take Me Home, Country Roads." I'm like,
cool.
I'm like, Richie's going to love that. What was the appeal on that song? Why did you want to cover that one?
Well, that was actually Val Garay, my producer and friend. That was a song of his choice, and I loved the song. I loved that one probably as much as any of John Denver's songs for sure. And when he brought it up, hey, listen, I'm thinking I'm a country boy too, man. I can just swap Colorado for West Virginia any old time, man. And it came out really good. Happy to. It was fun, and then just giving it our little touch too, which brought it up to date from when John did it. But I loved the song because it was a song that people were so familiar with.
You grew up just outside of Dayton, Ohio, and I want to know what life was like when you're maybe in your late teens and you're just trying to get your music. Well, trying to find a place where they let you play, not let alone let you rehearse and make a lot of noise. But you're just trying to get your music played and listening to radio coming in from Chicago and Cleveland and Memphis. And just talk about those very, very early days when you're sitting there going, this is what I want to do, and here are my early influences.
It kind of moved from one era to the other. Early on, I actually was loving the doo-wop sound of Dion and the Belmonts and Little Anthony and the Imperials and that kind of stuff when I was even in junior high. And then all of a sudden, it went to folk music. As I was more like a senior in college. Went on to college and all that, and it wasn't until I actually got out to L.A. that we actually got into doing rock and roll. But so the influences were amazing. The biggest influence that I had of those days, here we go, Ricky Nelson, watching Ozzie and Harriet, and I could not wait for the end of the show for Ricky to come on and sing. And when I heard him singing "Bebop Baby" over a crib to a baby, and then at the last verse end up at that high school gym auditorium, it was like, okay, this is really what I want to do.
But you guys had to be careful not to be country. You were country rock, because in those days, country was not cool at all. Country meant, especially young people, Conway Twitty.
It was just something that Jimmy Messina and I, we decided we wanted to do. Jimmy was the last bass player in Buffalo Springfield. We knew when the band was going to break up, and it was just inevitable. And we said, hey, let's just put something together that has a little more country feel, and let's just try and bridge that gap. And so that was our hope. We weren't really starting anything new, but we were awakening something along with the Byrds and the Flying Burrito Brothers. We were waking up something that had laid dormant for quite a while with guys like Carl Perkins and Gene Vincent and Eddie Cochran, Buddy Holly, and those kind of guys, because they were doing rockabilly way back in the day, and that's what we started our country movement for rock and roll. It was not popular. Redneck and hippies didn't get along in those days, but today it's just music.
Let's talk about the album In the Country. What did you try to do? What was on your mind, and do you feel like you achieved it?
I just wanted to do the best country songs that had touched me over the last 10, 15, maybe 20 years. We wanted to make these songs our own.
I've been a big fan of Poco for many, many years, but I've been a bigger fan of Buffalo Springfield. You guys had balls, too, because, back then when the songs were 2.5, 3 minutes long tops, because that's what the radio stations demanded, you come along with a song like Bluebird, a tremendous classic, and not only is it a long song, but it stops right in the middle. I'm thinking to myself, oh man, these guys, they just don't even care what anybody thinks. Go back to those early days of Buffalo Springfield and working with Steven and the rest of the guys.
We were so blessed to be able to do what we wanted to do. We weren't told we have to sound like anybody, copy anybody, be like anybody. We could be inventors, just bring on our own music and how we establish it. Ahmet Ertegun was really wonderful in that respect, and so it was really good. We could experiment. It was a great time just to experiment with music. I mean, we could do something like Bluebird or Kind Woman, Mr. Soul on an album, and you know what? It was just part of who we were. We were just expressing who the five of us were at the time, and nobody was telling us, well, that won't work, because you know what? It worked. We were able to do that, and so we were pioneers in that regard as well, you know, just being able to be who we were.
Richie, congratulations on a tremendous musical career. When you're a kid on the southwest side of Chicago, living across the street from Midway Airport, you don't think that as an adult you get into the broadcasting business and you're going to be able to talk to one of the founding members of POCO in Buffalo Springfield. But this is definitely gotten one off the bucket list. I really appreciate your time, and congratulations on everything, and hope the album does very, very well for you.
Thanks, JC. Thank you so much, man. Enjoy it, okay? Enjoyed talking to you.
So that's the closest we're going to come around here to anything religious or having to do with Easter that isn't comedy or parody or something like that. The other thing we had to deal with this week, and it just seems like more and more people have had it up to here with April Fool's Day and tricks and stunts and things like that. I think the world has changed significantly in the last 20 years, and that stuff just doesn't fly anymore. Too often we're hearing news that we would like to think is a stunt or a gag or something that's not true, only to find out that it is true, and it's usually not a very good thing. There's people out there who are still going to stick with the whole April Fool's Day thing, and I think those people are becoming very, very unpopular. But I have to tell you this quick story. So this was about 26 years ago. We get invited, a lot of us broadcasters, to an unveiling at the Chase Park Plaza, at the Coruscant Ballroom, of this unveiling of the St. Louis Rams 1999 Super Bowl DVD. It's got all the highlights and all the commentary and the whole thing. Maybe you have a copy in your home. I don't know. But a lot of people were going to go out and run and get these things. And we, as members of the media, got invited to this thing, so we got a chance to see the whole thing ahead of everybody else. And then it was our job to go on the radio and talk about how great it was so that people would go out and buy it. That's how the world works. So I go to this thing. I meet a girl. We start dating. And about, 3 or 4 months into this relationship, and it was pretty sizzling little deal too. I mean, it was going on. And just in the process of talking one night, she tells me that she has not told any of her friends or family that she's dating me. And I was like, why not? And as soon as I said it, I realized, I think I probably know why not. She might be met with some, shall we say, disapproval. Like, well, you're going to have to tell them eventually. Yeah, I am. And so right after that, she started telling people, or as the case may be, alerting people to the fact that this was going on. Oh, I hate him. How can you? Oh, my God, what are you doing? Why would you ever go out with him? He's such a, oh, my God. Getting called every name in the book, according to the story that I get back from her after she tells everybody. I'm like, well, what was their objection? And she says to me, well, one of my girlfriends said, oh, I hate him. He's such an a-hole. You know what he did? He went to the top of the arch once, and he was throwing televisions and stereos off the top of the arch to people that were down below, and he told people that if they caught it, they could keep it. You know how dangerous that is? What an a-hole. And after I stopped giggling to myself, which was not met by a smile or approval on her part, I said to her, well, there's a couple of things wrong with that story, 3 in particular, all right? Number 1, Catch It and You Keep It was a Monty Python bit. It was one of their albums in, I want to say, about 1972. So you need to know that. Number 2, the thing you're describing was an April Fool's Day stunt by a radio station. And number 3, that radio station wasn't even mine. It was Smash who did it. It wasn't even me. I tell you, Mo, I'm a victim of circumstance. So I'm not very hot on the whole April Fool's Day thing. I'll probably stop talking to you if you ever do anything like that. Oh, and I just remembered I got another reason to hate April Fool's Day. It was April 1st, 1976, and it was my first job out of college in Rockford, Illinois, WYFE radio, and I was doing the morning show. And as my dad used to say, whenever you're working for somebody other than the guy who hired you, you are on thin ice, you are on shaky ground. And boy, was he right, because it was probably my only first or second experience with something like that. And sure enough, they brought in a bunch of guys from Louisville, I still remember. And these guys, they were changing everything about the radio station, everything about the morning show, everything about everything that I did. And even then, just a year out of college, I knew that they didn't know what they were doing. And so I resisted a little bit, and I got my ass fired. And it was, in fact, on April Fool's Day, 1976. They fired me. I kept waiting for them to say, April Fools, and they never did. So I called my sister, and speaking of bucket list issues, which we were last hour, I had always wanted to see the mountains in Colorado, Denver and Boulder. And I had an old college friend who was living in El Dorado Springs, which is up in the mountains up from Boulder. This was one of the prettiest girls I'd ever met in my entire life. I managed to go out with her for about a month or two. That was all I got out of it. But she had moved up there and completely changed her life. She was a little cupcake in high school. Cutest thing you ever saw. But she moves to Colorado, and all of a sudden, she lets the hair under her arms grow, and she's not wearing any makeup, and she's just getting into this whole Earth Lady Colorado Mountains thing. So that was a bit of a shocker, but that's what I did. I called up my sister, and I said, what are you doing for like the next 10 days? Why? Can you get vacation time? Yeah, why? So we hopped in the car, and we drove from Chicago all the way to Denver. And then up to Boulder, which is really real close, and stayed with another one of my college friends, knocked around Denver and Boulder a little bit, and then we went then we went down to Colorado Springs, because I heard it was pretty, and it was, and I wanted to buy, I'm a real big fan of turquoise, and especially turquoise and silver together. When that whole thing started about, it was the early 2000s, when all that turquoise, that big chunky jewelry thing started taking over the world, I remember I was buying jewelry with turquoise and silver for every girl I went out with back then. It was so popular. And I love that stuff. I got a little chunk of turquoise right here that I see every day. I just love it. And you can get real good deals on it out in the mountains of Colorado. So I went out there and bought some. And then, I don't know if you remember this, if you're old enough, you remember the obsession that Midwesterners had with Coors beer? It was like legendary. And somebody's older brother would come back with some, and you'd have a little sip. Oh, my God, it's so good. Coors beer had this mystique about it. You just had to get some. So I took orders, and I brought a case of Coors back for everybody I knew. So we go up into the serious mountains of Rocky Mountain State National Park, and the wind was blowing about 70 miles an hour. It was about 10 degrees, and I'm like, okay, this might be really beautiful, but my eyeballs have frozen over and I can't even see. Let's get the hell out of here. And in the process of doing, went through a little town called Nederland, Nederland, which is the place where Dan Fogelberg used to play before he became famous, and he was legendary in those mountains of Colorado around Rocky Mountain State National Park. So we did all that stuff. We're there for about a week, and we come driving back. And I swear to you, we're coming up 55, and we're literally 10 minutes from home after having driven straight through. We drove all night, took turns driving, and it's, 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, and we're driving along on 55, and I get a flat tire. And now I've got 175 cases of Coors beer in my trunk, all of which has to be unloaded on the side of the Stevenson Expressway, I-55 in Chicago. It's got to be stacked on the side of the road so we can get the jack under the damn car and get the tire changed. I'm telling you, some days it just doesn't pay to get out of bed. So like I said, I have plenty of reasons not to like April Fool's Day. I'm warning you, don't start with me. All right. One of the reasons we're on the air here every Sunday morning and every Saturday night is because of our friends at Window World. 1-800-GET-WINDOWS, one of only 2 replacement window companies with a good housekeeping seal of approval. The BBB, the Better Business Bureau, also big fans of Window World. And I'll tell you who the real fans are, the over 80,000 customers in St. Louis that have said, get these lousy, leaky, unsafe, archaic windows out of my house and put in some nice, beautiful Window World windows. I lived in a house once where the window didn't even lock. A couple of them didn't even lock. And if the burglar said no, all they would have to do is walk up to the house, open the window, and walk in. So there's a safety issue involved, too. Window World uses a double-strength glass that gives it a strength not commonly used in replacement windows. And you're talking about serious energy efficiency, just like it was trying to keep the cold out during the winter. Now you're trying to keep that heat and humidity out of your house all summer long. Get a free home estimate today from one of the managers. The entire group, born and raised St. Louis. They've lived here for 23 years and running Window World. They're open 7 days a week, even on weekends. So all you got to do is call 1-800-GET-WINDOWS or get online at windowworldstlouis.com, windowworldstlouis.com. Window World, 1-800-GET-WINDOWS. I've been to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland 3 separate times now, and I've enjoyed every time. And they do mix it up. They'll put some stuff in storage and bring new stuff out, and then take that stuff out and bring something else in. So it's an ever-changing environment there in Cleveland. Todd Messick is got the job of deciding what to do with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and how to do it.
We don't just display artifacts. We curate so that we pick the right ones. They have to be authenticated. And then we also try to tell a story just to give you, if you don't know, if you're 29 years old, you might not know the whole Bob Dylan story. So for that next generation, we look at make sure they do know why it's so important, try to connect it to something that's relevant today, and give them a deep experience. But there's some things that we have. There's a guitar we have not on display, but in our possession. And the curators are pretty sure that it's the real one, but they won't put it on display because it hasn't passed their litmus test. So there's some things they call it in museum jargon, they call it provenance. There's either trail of sales. There's ways you can triangulate that with photography. If there's a nick in it, certainly people can replicate things, but they look at it a couple different ways, through trail of ownership, through different third-party sources, and there's a whole science behind this. But there's, like I said, there's times that we have stuff that we're pretty confident it's the real object, but we don't put it on display unless we're more than 100% sure that it's real.
How many people do you have working on just that part of the operation alone?
Walking through the museum, the offices in my head, in the curatorial and exhibitions, there's probably about 10 people, and 4 or 5 of them dedicated towards collecting artifacts. And, they get them from a variety of sources. They get them from a collector, but often it's from the artists themselves. A lot of times you find it's from their mom. Mom keeps everything. She'll have T-shirts from high school. She'll have, the first contract. She'll have different things. So a lot of times it's from family members. But it's a variety of sources, but it's a long game.
How much of the stuff comes to you as opposed to the stuff that you actually have to go out and hunt down?
It's a little bit of both. What we try to do is, they're called curators because they're curating a story. So we're trying to not just accept what people have to offer, but to make sure that it fits with the stories that we're trying to tell. And, we have this Rock and Politics exhibit up there right now, and it's really timely because the RNC just left Cleveland, but also just timely because there's so many ways that music has in the past interacted with our political world, but lessons from the past, whether it's civil rights or the Vietnam War, now translate to things like what's happening in China or in the Middle East. So you can kind of take a little bit of perspective from the past and shine a little light on understanding what's happening today. There's some people that come in here that are just diehard fans. They know every album, they've read every liner note, they've seen every show, and we need to give them a deep tissue experience, stuff that they couldn't get anywhere else. Some people just want to skim the surface and just see that object, and then some people are somewhere in between where they want to swim around it a little bit. So we want to make sure that the experience is multidimensional.
That's a big job to make all 3 of those groups that you just described happy.
Yeah, some people just want to see it and they want to get, go through real quick. Some people want everything. So between the videos, the display panels, some interactives that we put in, programming we have, we're even looking at how people that work in the exhibits behave and how they add to the experience. A lot of people use the word interactive. It's thrown around pretty loosely. When we talk about that in our internal conversations, say like the most analog interactive you can get is a person, and that's what people want to connect with. So our people on the floor will look at you, maybe ask you a couple questions. Where are you from? What are you interested? What do you see? And give them a story, because if you and I walk around and I tell you a story about that guitar from Jimi Hendrix, it's a little bit more meaningful as opposed to you just seeing it on your own. So we try to give them, between the technology, between people, between different programs we do, give a full experience and really an understanding, so that people walk away understanding why this art form is so important.
Do you have some sort of credo or some sort of mission statement that you operate by with regard to what gets in here and what doesn't?
Yes, so the overall the mission is to engage, teach, and inspire through the rock and roll. So, we'll look at, sometimes it's about just those rock god artists that some powerful figure like John Lennon or Jimi Hendrix that really changed the game. Often we'll look for just the important objects. We don't want just anything. A lot of times we'll look to connect someone like that. Like if you look at our Elvis Presley stuff, that'll lead you to a conversation about Bruno Mars, because there's parallels there. And if your entry point is one of those artists, if you're a Bruno Mars fan, you may get a better appreciation of where the music came from or where the whole show came from. And if you're an Elvis Presley fan, you might get turned on to something new.
Well, this is where it's getting into a really dicey area here, because things are changing. Every year, the demographic moves, that bump moves further and further down. And maybe some of the really older artists, start going into like things like Cream or the Yardbirds, and you start to wonder, is this stuff relevant? Well, of course it's relevant, because you're telling the history of rock and roll. And at the same time, you see the demographic of the people who are coming in here. They never heard any Yardbirds records. They probably don't have any idea who these people are. And then you look around and you've got, Madonna in there, Taylor Swift, which I think would probably surprise a lot of people. How are you dealing with the politics, I guess you would say, of what gets in here, what you feature, rock versus pop versus what is it? You already have all the controversy that exists already about some of the acts that are inducted into the Rock Hall. This is a mess. We thank Todd Messick, Vice President of Marketing and Communications at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in beautiful downtown Cleveland. You know what? Cleveland rocks.
It sure does, JC.
A couple of years ago, I was working at this radio station that billed itself as Rock and Americana. And the lazy you-know-whats who were putting the music into the computer were so lazy that on like Pink Floyd tracks and things like that, where one track just slides automatically into the other, the song would just end like that. And they left it in like that. Didn't even bother fading it out. And then they're like, here's the latest from Nathaniel Ratliff. It's like, it's Ratliff. Here's the new one from Tedeschi Trucks. It's Tedeschi. Yeah, we're cool. We're cool. We don't know how the bands pronounce their names, but we're cool. That station's not even on the air anymore. Just as well. Buzz. All right. Oh, yeah. I was talking about this a couple of weeks ago about Baltimore catechism, because, tomorrow because today being Easter and all, I was just thinking about all the religious stuff I could possibly come up with. And we were in grade school on the south side of Chicago. My grade school was directly across the street from Midway Airport. So if you fly in there for the Cubs-Cardinals games, or maybe you're going for business or pleasure, or because you've got relatives or friends, whatever the case may be, if you fly into Midway, that brown building that is just to the north on the other side of 55th Street, adjacent to Midway Airport, that was my grade school. And about every 7 or 8 years, a plane would go down, either on approach or on takeoff. And, there'd just be a plane stuck into the side of the building, and a whole bunch of people would be killed. And I'm thinking to myself, what chance do I have? Because the law of averages does say that at some point, I'm going to be here for 8 years. It's a grade school, 1 through 8. That at some point, I'm going to be picking a nose gear out of my ass, because it's only a matter of time before one of these planes crashes into the side of my school. Therefore, what is the point in learning anything. It's almost like that scene in Annie Hall, Woody Allen, where the family lives under a roller coaster. That's sort of what it was like. You're just sitting there and these planes are going past the window. I know people think I'm exaggerating. I posted a picture a couple of years ago on Facebook, the Showgram with J.C. Corcoran, the Showgram with J.C. Corcoran on Facebook, that showed one of these planes landing in my neighborhood, and you can practically see the heads, the outline of the heads, when you look in the window, the side of the plane. Not making it up. But I'd be sitting there and being bored. But it just shows that if you repeat something enough, it will be committed to memory. For example, I never sat there back in the, I guess it was it was in the 70s when the Big Mac came out. I didn't sit there and decide to myself, I think I'm going to memorize that 2 all-beef patty, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, onions, pickles on a sesame seed bun. I'm not going to sit there and memorize it. But one day, it was just there. It was just there. And guess what? Here it is, decades later. It's still there. And I can't get rid of it. And I think that's what they had in mind when they were teaching us something called Baltimore catechism. And I don't think they do this anymore. Because I had friends who went to public school and then they had to go to Sunday school. And they had this stuff drilled in their head. But for us, it was every freaking day. I had to go to church every single day. I had to go to Mass every single day except Saturday for 8 years. For 8 freaking years, I had to go to church and go to Mass every single morning. And guess what? I didn't dig it. But again, like I said, it's that Baltimore catechism. Why did God make us? God made us because he loved us. How did God make us? God made us in his image and likeness. What is a sacrament? A sacrament is an outward sign instituted by Christ to give grace. That stuff is all still in there. And even if I tried, I couldn't get rid of it. And I don't believe that in all my travels and all the different cities I've lived in, world travel included, I don't believe that anybody has come up to me and said, what is a sacrament? Because I'd be ready. Sacrament is an outward sign instituted by Christ to give grace. Next. And now, as an adult, with the benefit of hindsight, you do think to yourself, what the hell was all that about? Didn't make me any more religious. It didn't make me believe or not believe in God. Oh, but then when I got into high school, there was a little hot dog stand that was right next to a saloon about 6 blocks from my house. I used to go down there just before it closed. It would close at 11 o'clock, like on a Friday night or a Saturday night. And I'd get myself a hot dog, and I'd see the guys stumbling out of the saloon, out of the bar. All those guys were dressed up in suits and were the ushers in church the following morning. Some of those boys were sweating like you wouldn't believe. And I'm looking to myself, okay, so let me see if I understand this. So you're an usher and you're really, really holy, but like 9 hours ago, you did a face plant into the bushes because you were so wiped out. Yeah, I think I'll pass. And I don't begrudge people who are religious. If you're religious and you think that's something you like or something you need in your life, then fine. Who am I to tell you what you need in your life? I'm just telling you, in my life, I know the difference between right and wrong. And really, when it comes down to it, that's what even the 10 Commandments are all about. It's right versus wrong. I have a friend in St. Louis, and she's attractive, and she's in remarkable shape for her age because she's an exercise-type person. And she's a product of the St. Louis Catholic Archdiocesan school system, still goes to church, but was cheating on her husband and does one or two other things that I think are in violation of some sort of Catholic code somewhere. We're all adults. You know if you're doing something wrong. I also never got the idea of why, when you do something really, really good, like under a banner where you got a lot of people watching and a lot of people involved, why that always has to be connected to some sort of church or religious organization. That one I don't get. We're going to go feed the poor. Well, you need a church involved to do that. No, you don't. No, you don't. I can feed the poor. I can feed the babies that don't have enough to eat. House the people with no shoes on their feet. Steve Miller taking over. No, but the 10 Commandments, all right? 10 Commandments. George, Mr. Carlin, please.
The 10 Commandments. Here's my problem. Why are there 10? I'm going to show you how you could reduce the number of commandments and come up with a list that's a little more workable and logical. We're going to start with the first 3, and I'll use the Roman Catholic version because those are the ones I was taught as a little boy. I am the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not have strange gods before me. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Thou shalt keep holy the Sabbath. Right off the bat, the first 3, pure bull. Sabbath day, Lord's name, strange gods. Spooky language. Spooky language. Designed to scare and control primitive people. In no way does superstitious nonsense like this apply to the lives of intelligent, civilized humans in the 21st century. You throw out the first 3 commandments, you're down to 7. Next, honor thy father and mother. Obedience, respect for authority. Just another name for controlling people. The truth is, obedience and respect should not be automatic. They should be earned. They should be based on the parent's performance. Parent's performance. All right? Some parents deserve respect. Most of them don't. Period. You're down to 6. Now, in the interest of logic, something religion is very uncomfortable with, we're going to jump around the list a little bit. Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness. Stealing and lying. Well, actually, these 2 both prohibit the same kind of behavior. Dishonesty, stealing, and lying. So you don't need 2 of them. Instead, you combine them and you call it thou shalt not be dishonest. And suddenly, you're down to 5. And as long as we're combining, I have 2 others that belong together. Thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Once again, these 2 prohibit the same kind of behavior, in this case, marital infidelity. The difference is coveting takes place in the mind, and I don't think you should outlaw fantasizing about someone else's wife. Otherwise, what's a guy going to think about when he's waxing his carrot? But marital fidelity is a good idea, so we're going to keep the idea and call this one, thou shalt not be unfaithful. And suddenly, we're down to 4. But when you think about it, honesty and fidelity are really part of the same overall value. So in truth, you could combine the 2 honesty commandments with the 2 fidelity commandments and give them simpler language, positive language instead of negative, and call the whole thing, thou shalt always be honest and faithful, and we're down to 3. Thou shalt, they're going away fast. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's goods. This one is just plain stupid. Coveting your neighbor's goods is what keeps the economy going. Am I right? Your neighbor gets a vibrator that plays "O All Ye Faithful." You want to get one too. Coveting creates jobs. Leave it alone. You throw out coveting, and you're down to 2 now. The big honesty and fidelity commandment, and the one we haven't talked about yet, thou shalt not kill. Murder. The 5th commandment. But when you think about it, religion has never really had a big problem with murder. Not really. More people have been killed in the name of God than for any other reason. All you have to do... Sure. All you have to do is look at Northern Ireland, the Middle East, Kashmir, the Inquisition, the Crusades, and the World Trade Center to see how seriously the religious folks take thou shalt not kill. The more devout they are, the more they see murder as being negotiable. It's negotiable. You know? It depends. It depends on who's doing the killing and who's getting killed. So, with all of this in mind, I leave you with my revised list of the 2 commandments. Thou shalt always be honest and faithful to the provider of thy nookie. And thou shalt try real hard not to kill anyone, unless, of course, they pray to a different invisible man from the one you pray to. 2 is all you need. Moses could have carried him down the hill in his pocket. And if they had a list like that, I wouldn't mind those folks in Alabama putting it up on the courthouse wall. As long as they included one additional commandment, thou shalt keep thy religion to thyself.
We're all just having fun. Come on. All right, that's enough out of me. I know everybody's busy. They got candy to steal, eggs to point out to little kids with baskets who are a foot and a half from the egg and still can't find it. It's over there. No, to your left. He doesn't know his right from his left. I'm not helping. All right, got an exciting couple of days coming up as the Artemis II space rocket going to do that dipsy doodle around the moon and then swing back. You know, it is interesting that on the way there, something goes wrong, not a damn thing they can do. There is no system in place to turn the thing around on the several days it takes to go from Earth to the moon. Something goes wrong, they're screwed.
The J.C. Corcoran Podcast.